Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Prince Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell. On today's episode, we've got a pair of talented musicians in a chummy chat about making songs and making a life while making songs. It's Melina Duterte, aka J. Som, and Pascal Stevenson, aka Fashion Club. Now, Stevenson just released the second Fashion Club album, A Love You Cannot Shake, but it's different enough than the first that it almost feels like a debut. That surely has something to do with the fact that it's the first Fashion Club music since Stevenson's gender transition. There's a genre freedom that wasn't as evident on the first one, which felt a bit closer to Stevenson's indie-leaning band Moaning. A Love You Cannot Shake clearly honors big pop music, but it frequently swerves before giving into any obvious trappings. She found some fantastic guests to add to the Sideways fun too, including Talkhouse Podcast alumni Perfume genius and Julie Byrne, as well as the other half of today's conversation, J. Som. Now, J. Som made a splash with her first couple of bedroom pop albums in 2015 and 2016, and though she hasn't released a new album since 2019's fantastic Anak Ko, she's been busy nonetheless, both starting some new projects, producing for other musicians, and playing bass for the indie rock supergroup Boy Genius. She's been working on new material of her own as well, and she had a song on the soundtrack to the critically acclaimed movie I Saw the TV Glow, alongside like-minded artists like Caroline Polachek and The Weather Station. And of course, there's her contribution to the Fashion Club record, Ghost. Let's hear a little bit of that song right here. In this lively conversation, Stevenson and Duterte chat about songwriting, including Stevenson's tendency to start with the biggest parts, and Duterte's opinion on what constitutes a treat while you're producing. They tell each other toward the end of the conversation which pop star they'd most like to write for, and we learn that Stevenson's specialty is what she calls fucked up ballads. Enjoy.
First of all, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
You're doing okay?
I'm like, yeah, I mean, I feel like you know how it is. It's just like stressful to release a record because you have a bunch of expectations and stuff. And I'm trying lately to be like totally without expectations and like very serene about it, but it's hard.
What is like tripping you out? Is it the album cycle mode that includes the whole thing, like press stuff, or? I
don't know. It's relatively like a new project, kind of, at least in this form. I think it's just wanting it to be received well and wanting, it's like anything. It's just like wanting people to like you. I will say I like, for once in my life, I am like pretty confident that the record is good. And so now my kind of hold up is like, is it going to reach people? At least for me, it's insane to be like, I'm not totally worried about people liking it if they hear it. But I think the concern is like it actually reaching people.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of musician friends are going through the same thing. They make like the best body of work that they've ever done, which is how I feel about your music in this new album. And like, it's hard not to pay attention to the streaming numbers and just even the engagement on Instagram.
Yeah.
And like, also your shows, right? Like how many people come, how many tickets that you sell, I guess. Yeah.
I think since COVID, this concern with like streaming numbers specifically and tickets, like pre-sale ticket sales from people that work in music business, it's weird because it feels like an outside pressure. It's not like something that I think necessarily artists are like, oh, I'm so concerned about my streaming numbers, or I'm so concerned about how many tickets I sell to my show. It's more like there are people in the industry who really care about that, and they make that known, and then you have to, it kind of like transfers to you, and you're like, okay, I guess I care about this thing all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. But let's get into the album.
Yeah.
I did my homework again last night.
I love that.
I was texting you about my favorite song, Deny. But, I mean, last night was the first time where I really got to listen, and I think you really hit it out of the park. Like, you did an incredible job. It's a very special record, and I remember, I think it was a year ago, right, that you came over and we recorded some of the vocals for Ghost?
Yeah. I don't even remember when it was because I stayed at your house in August, right? It was when you were on tour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and you were house sitting, and then you used my studio, too.
Yes.
Yeah. And the rubber bridge makes it onto a couple songs, right?
I mean, yeah, I feel like that was a huge influence of... We're getting distracted, but I feel like that was a huge influence of me staying at your place, like house sitting for you for those 2 weeks and using your studio. I like put it on everything I possibly could. And then I bought one. I needed one of these.
Did you buy it from Old Style?
Yeah, of course.
Hell yeah.
Well, I love Old Style. I've been going there for years. Like I've always got my guitars set up there and stuff. But I think that like using that guitar at your place, that like baritone rubber bridge at your place was the first time I'd actually played one. Oh. It's just such it sounds close to me to like my stand-up bass or something, which I have been like kind of reforming an attachment to or like falling back in love with. Like I've been playing stand-up bass and stuff, and there's some on the record, and that like rubber bridge, I think because of the flat wounds and like how dead it sounds, like it doesn't really ring out, reminds me of plucking like a cello or like a stand-up bass or something.
Yeah, I noticed that texture a lot through your record. It's like the electronic and organic combination. And you were a classical musician, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, did you like bow the upright bass, or was it like the fingers?
Yeah, no, I like all through pretty much, when did I start? I think for like first grade or something, I played violin for a couple years. And then when I got to middle school, I started playing upright bass, and I played all the way through like my first year of college. Wow. And I like didn't love it then, but my parents were kind of like, I loved music, obviously, but I didn't like having to practice and stuff. But my parents were very much like, we can't afford to send you to college. So basically, if you're not going to play sports or something, you have to do some like nerd activity that's going to get you scholarships.
Orchestra stuff is very, very nerdy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start like singing or just making music for yourself and writing?
Like my last year of high school, probably I started making like electronic music, like ambient music and stuff, and like weird experimental music with my computer with like GarageBand and stuff. But I didn't really start singing. Like all throughout college, I was pretty much just making electronic music.
Yeah.
And then I would produce all of the Moaning demos and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I remember Moaning having a lot of synths against like guitar riffs and thinking that was always so cool.
And I would always record our demos, and I would record friends and stuff, but I wasn't actually like singing at all until that first record I made. I like what, I don't know. I was bad at it. I still don't think I'm like amazing at it, but
I love
think
your voice.
It's like it's like a practice thing though, you know, when you haven't done it, it feels so nerve-wracking. It's like hard to even get your real voice. It takes, I think, years to even find what your real like singing voice is because you're trying to work through it. But that's the same as guitar. It's like you don't immediately become good at guitar.
It's a muscle you have to flex.
Totally.
And there's another layer with being the person that produces and records your own music and sings it. You're constantly facing the struggle of like hearing your own voice and engineering yourself. So like fixing the tone or like, you know, the tuning, and you don't have like an outside perspective. So it's just like an enormous amount of trust that you have to put in yourself.
It's hard to be objective about like if your voice is appealing or not. Because I would even say there's no like such thing as, I mean, there is objectively, but to me, there's no such thing as like a good voice. Like I like playing with singers that I think are like bad singers.
I love a bad singer.
But there is something interesting about the quality of their voice.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know if you have that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know what you're saying. But I think in your record, when I listen to it, it really just sounds like you. I think getting to know you better and just like hearing, you know, your background and where you came to be with this album, it just feels so familiar and comfortable and human too. And I think listening last night and thinking about our meeting last year, we talked for like 6 hours. Just 6 hours straight. We were just talking about like life and like, I don't know, gossiping, but also kind of, I mean, you're openly a Black trans woman, and also you're sober from alcohol.
Yeah.
And I think that when I hear your record, it's hard not to latch onto those themes while I'm listening to what you say. And the instruments are so dynamic and at times like so explosive and then really quiet. And that's something I really appreciate about your music. And I just think that you did it. This is your out. I don't know how else to say it, but like you did it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that.
I really appreciate it. I mean, obviously that means a lot coming from you because I feel like you've been doing so much crazy stuff for the past, I feel like I've been aware of you for how long now? 10 years or something?
I think it's 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
7,
where we've
8,
been
yeah.
around each other and you're you have a really impressive resume.
I don't stop working.
I know you're kind of a workaholic.
Yeah, I guess I am.
I thought that the other, last week when you were like, I booked a session on the 16th, actually, I was like, okay, workaholic.
Okay, she won't stop working, I guess. Isn't that how it is, though? I think, living in LA.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
You get it. Producer stuff, engineer stuff, it's, you have to be a lifer, I think, if you take it seriously and you care. And I care a lot. And I see that with you, too, the way that we talk about production. And sorry to go straight to the nerdy stuff, but
no, I
think you are an amazing and accomplished producer, mixer, engineer. And I'm a huge fan. Are you producing anyone else right now?
I'm about to start working on something for my friend's band, this band No Swoon in LA. Mm-hmm. Just doing a few songs, but I'm not working on anything and then I do work with my friend Clarity a lot, mm-hmm. who has a song on that Transa comp that's coming out.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So it's her and Claro, and I worked on that with Gabe Wax.
That's awesome.
And I work on stuff with Clarity a lot, but I'm not so busy with production or something. I wish, but I am. Mm-hmm. I play live with Sasami, so I've been doing some stuff like that because she's gearing up to put out music, and then just prepping this stuff. I kind of wish I was just making records year round, but I feel like it'll come.
I think it'll come for sure, especially once this comes out.
Yeah.
I always talk about how albums, if you're a self-producer, albums are the best resume that you could put out for work.
I agree 100%. It's kind of why I started making records.
Yeah.
And then the more I do it, the more I fall in love with songwriting and mm-hmm. all of the other kind of artistic elements of it. And I feel there was a point where I was my ideal is to produce for other people. I don't really care about being my own artist. So mm-hmm. we'll see what the future holds.
Of course. Yeah. And when you produce your own stuff, especially with this record, did you write all the songs and arrange them beforehand? Because I know you're in Ableton, and I saw some of your sessions, and there were some songs where you were still figuring out arrangement. But what did you write first? Did you write lyrics and melodies, or did you do voice memo stuff?
Yeah, my notes app goes crazy. I just
really?
have so many snippets of songs, just 1 or 2 lines, or verses or choruses.
Yeah.
And then I'll usually sit down at Ableton or sit down at the guitar, one or the other. And I'll either start producing. I mean, it all starts just having fun, literally. I sit down to play the guitar just to be I should practice guitar, or I should play guitar because that sounds fun. And then I end up repeating 2 chords for a while. I'm okay, I'm vibing with this. And then I start to sing a melody or something. So I do write a lot of songs on guitar like that. Mm-hmm. But then there's occasions where I will have kind of produced a little loop, which Ableton is obviously great for.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get stuck in that loop where they're shit, now all I have is the loop. But I kind of like it because I'm all right, I've got the loop. It won't let me go too far. I have kind of a vibe for this song. Now let me take it out to the guitar, workshop the chords and the vocal melody and the lyrics and all of that stuff. And then I can bring it back into the computer and flesh it out as a full song. I start stretching stuff out and making things weird. And a lot of my arrangement process is just, adding a ton of shit, like making it as big as possible, and then going into certain sections and just pulling it all out.
Yeah, just throwing paint at the wall.
I love dynamics. I think if you listen to the record, you're like, okay, we get it.
She likes quiet and loud.
Yeah. I know Crescendo hate to see me coming. But like my big thing is that I need to start with the loudest point usually.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something I do. I like try to bring to other people when I'm working with other people. I'm like, let's start super big, because I've made the mistake so many times of starting like the verses really big and then being like, oh shit, I don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So I like to start with like choruses and stuff like that, or like whatever the biggest part of the song is going to be. I want to like establish the dynamics for that before I move on to arranging how the rest of the song is going to work dynamically.
That's cool that you work in reverse in that way.
Deny is a good example where like I didn't do that. I like definitely made the verses first and then was like really attached to how those were dynamically, and they're like pretty gnarly. And then I was like, I don't really have anywhere to go for the chorus of this song. Yeah. So I had to kind of do the opposite, where I was like, okay, well, the chorus of this song is going to be one instrument and my voice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's like something you have to commit to.
Yeah.
Especially with such like dense material in your songs. I guess one thing that's coming up for me, like working with people, you know, everyone's a little different when it comes to what we call treats. And treats can be like, you know, the little production swells or like little freaky glitches and stuff like that. But your album and your music in general, like you have a lot of that going throughout each song.
Yeah.
But it feels like they're all intentional.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, how do you decide that?
I think part of it is definitely intuitive.
Yeah.
Which, like, sucks to hear. I know, but, like...
It's just in me.
I think there is part of it where you're just like, oh, like, this part needs to be weird. But honestly, I, like, arrange through the songs pretty much without any of that stuff first.
Yeah, of course.
It's pretty rare that, like, the glitchiness or the, like, strangeness of something is there from the beginning. It happens occasionally, but usually if I start out with something that's too weird, I end up having to scrap it. So I feel like I have to start so normal, and then I just listen to the song over and over and over again, and I'm just like, where am I losing it a little? Like, where am I not feeling like totally grabbed? Because I think knowing when to not put in the little treats is also important. Like, when can it just be like a regular ass guitar or a regular piano?
Yeah. Everyone always says like, oh, I want to get weird.
Yeah.
And like, how weird?
Yeah. Part of the problem with it is it takes your focus off stuff like lyrics. So you kind of have to know I think part of knowing when to use it is being like, okay, when can I fit it in? So like in between lyrics, stuff like that, you know, in instrumental parts, because I'm not putting in a lot of like guitar solos and stuff. I mean, there's one or two, but it's kind of in lieu of that kind of more traditional rock instrumental part.
And when you're recording and you like get to a certain point where you're like, wow, this slaps. This is so good. Do you ever think, I really want people to hear this, but it's too late in the song, I need to like put some of it in the beginning? Like, is that important to you? Because I feel like that comes a lot with like people I work with. They always want the treats and like the best part to happen immediately, because they're like thinking about, you know, people's attention spans.
Totally. I feel like that's so valid. And I think, I definitely do that. If you listen to the record, you can tell, like, I do a lot of intros and shit.
I love your intros and outros. You do love an intro. You have like sometimes like 1 minute intros, and I love that.
I'm an intro queen. I love it. I don't know. But I think there's part of it that is like, ooh, it's a little like storytelling vibe, and it's like setting the scene here, and it's just like fun to open up big. But then there's part of it that I think is that aspect of it, which I've never really thought of before, but I think there definitely is part of it where I'm like, okay, if I do something really weird in the beginning, the rest of the song can be normal.
Yes, I got your attention now. Keep listening. That makes sense.
Like one day, that song starts out with this crazy intro because it originally had a much stranger version of that song. When I started performing that song live, it was a different tempo and it was just like a bass synth and strings, and that's it. The version I ended up landing on was like, well, this is how I play it when I play it on the guitar.
Yeah.
And so let me just translate that to kind of a band situation, but I still wanted a little bit of that, like the freakiness of the previous versions in there. So I put that big intro in there.
I love that intro. Yeah.
I do. It was honestly just like, it's like content from the song. Like I made it with that song in mind, so it wouldn't have fit anywhere else. And I was like, sonically, this is so interesting. I can't just get rid of it. So I was kind of like,
yeah,
let's give it this vibe that it's like coming through static and it's kind of like you're flipping radio stations or something.
And I love that after the intro, like when the rest of the song comes in, I think it's like one of the most accessible songs,
for
like
sure,
poppier, which is so funny and like cool because the intro is so crazy in a good way.
I know. I feel like if you bought a course that was like how to be a successful musician, or whatever, they would be like, don't do that.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what you want.
Yeah. Like any label person or like music business person, I think would be like, don't do that. That's dumb. But
yeah.
I want to be able to make a living off of my music, but I also want to be like true to myself.
I think it does set you apart to be true to yourself and actually be yourself nowadays and not like cater.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think there are some exceptions though.
Of course.
And I'm not trying to talk shit about anyone that lives that kind of lifestyle and music.
No,
but,
we have to be careful because I feel like a big part of our relationship is talking shit. And so...
No, it's not. It's about being nice to everyone and
yeah.
Never,
no, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
We never talk shit. Oh my god.
But I do think you're your full weird self. That is the way to build like an authentic fan base. Like the artists who have fans that will like that are not fair weather, that will like support them through all of their albums. I mean, it's Bjork. Like Bjork can make any record and like hundreds of thousands of people are going to be like, I love that, no matter how weird it is, because she has goodwill from being herself. And I feel like if you are an artist that's like, well, this is trendy right now, so I'm going to cater to what can like make me really, what's going to get me the most followers on a social media platform, or like what's going to go viral or whatever. It's like, good luck. You might do well for 5 years, and then eventually people are going to see through that there's nothing interesting there.
Yeah, people definitely see through it. And yeah, they definitely have short-lived careers. And I see that a lot with TikTok artists.
Yeah.
I think they can like, get a hit on TikTok. They have a dance and a song that goes viral. And, they have these kids lining out the door, but, they're not like buying merch and they're not buying the music.
Totally.
Which I think is a sign that people like you, is when they support you through buying your music.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, and it's more like, are they going to buy a second record also?
Exactly.
And a third record?
Are they going to
all
stick with
stuff?
you?
Like,
Yeah.
There's another thing that I feel like I think about a lot that I don't fully know how to express, but when an artist is truly unique, but then gets really, really popular really fast.
Yes.
I sometimes get scared for them because I'm like, oh, there's going to be so many people are going to try to jump on your wave, basically. And then people are going to turn on you. And like, you might not get because you got popular so fast with this really unique sound, instead of like working, like building up a fan base really slowly, like you might not get the chance to like build up an authentic fan base or something. Or like really, you might get robbed of that opportunity because like the favor is going to turn on you.
Yeah.
Because you just become too ubiquitous too fast.
I know what you're saying. And I think that parasocial relationship right now with artists that get gigantic I think we know who we're talking about right now, too. There's someone that comes to mind for me.
There's honestly a couple that I'm thinking of.
Oh, for sure. And I am scared for them. I think that would be the most mentally taxing thing to go through, is the entire world watching you, friends and family treating you differently, but you're just trying to work and you're trying to make art and there are expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's different than what I was even talking about, but that is horrifying.
But I was just thinking
now
that,
I know what you're talking about. Yes, that's horrifying. I can't imagine that. I'll never be in that position, luckily. I feel like I am thinking more like producing styles and like sonic styles that get like aped really hard.
Like what?
And then you're like, I mean, I'm thinking about McGee, honestly. I'm like, is that okay?
No, let's go. Let's please.
So, now what?
Azalea things. Yes.
I think that's like a really unique sound. I mean, it's not obviously wholly unique. It's not like there's no precedent for like chorused guitar or something, but I think all of that combined is like, oh, this is kind of a new, like, novel thing. I don't know how many records he's put out, but are you going to have the chance to make, like, another record that hits the same? Because so many people are going to make, like, McGee Light in the next 5 years.
That makes sense. I mean, isn't it kind of the same as Mac DeMarco? Like,
yeah, totally. It's
10
like,
years ago?
Do you ever get the chance to, like, actually follow up on that? Because so many people are just like, here's how to get the guitar tone.
Literally buying baritones and getting the flat wounds.
And then you're just fucking cursed. And then it's like, okay, now there's a million records that sound like a bad version of this good thing. And now everybody is sick of it. And now they like turn on you. And I don't know if that's a cynical way to look at it, just because I'm friends with a bunch of musicians that will like, that are jaded, that will be like, oh, I don't like that thing anymore. And if maybe just normal people, like non-musician people, are down to just like keep liking shit that they like. But I don't know. It's just something I think about because I'm on TikTok all the time.
Of course,
and
me too.
And I get served a million men being like, here's how to make a guitar sound like McGee, bro. I'm like, okay. Like, why would you want to do that?
It is wild. And like Eric Clapton was like, this is the best thing I've seen since Prince. And I'm like, wow, he's there.
Yeah. But I don't really understand. I mean, I obviously understand influence and I understand getting to your own unique sound through a little bit of imitation. And like, we all learn guitar by learning other people's songs and we learn production by trying to imitate production techniques and stuff we've found on our own. And I've gotten to a lot of interesting stuff via failing at reproducing techniques that I didn't.
Any specific artists?
There's like a specific effect I use on vocals a lot that is like really, I use Echo Boy and I use the digital delay setting on Echo Boy and I just heavily modulate it and turn the diffusion all the way up. And it's this kind of like, it basically came from me using that on snares and stuff to be like, how is Sophie getting these like metallic snares, which I think they're mostly FM. And then also this like kind of chorusy flangey thing on top. But a lot of that, like, me figuring out my own way of doing that came from listening to Sophie and being like, this is bonkers sounding. And then applying it to percussion and being like, well, that just sounds like Sophie. Like, I'm not really interested in that. Doesn't really have a place in my music ultimately. And also, if I want Sophie snare, I'll just go grab it from a splice pack or something. Like, I don't.
For sure.
But that's also not like, I'm not interested in making the music that Sophie made. I'm interested in listening to it, but like, I have no place making that music. It's not mine. I didn't think of it.
And she made her own samples too, right?
Yeah,
just
totally.
Straight up from scratch.
But I did end up being like, but I actually love the way that this sounds on vocals to have this kind of like breathy, diffused, short delay. And so a lot of the times on like background vocals, if I pitch them up or something to kind of like smooth out the imperfect pitch shifting or to just like lean into the way that like pitch shifted and formant shifted vocals sound bad, I will like I have a couple of effects that I use to kind of like smooth that kind of stuff out, but one of them is this like very short, diffused, modulated delay.
Yeah, I love that sound. I actually have always wanted to ask you, but I'm always kind of scared to be like, okay, what's the secret? Because it's everywhere on the record. And I'm glad that you gave it away. And it's an echo boy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's not like a unique thing, but I think for me that was like, I got something out of trying to figure out, and that's honestly most of the time when I'm trying to figure out how somebody did something, it's not so that I can use it in the way that they did it. It's curiosity.
It's a tool.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But I worry then with like sometimes when it gets too like, oh, type beat. It's like, you know what I mean? Then we're just, I guess I don't really understand why you would want to make music or a record that is like somebody else's basically sound. You know what I mean? But I guess it's not that different from getting a really, like a producer with a really distinct sound to produce your record. So what do I know?
I was about to like disagree too. I was about to say like, I feel like because I have experience with making a record and being like, this is a Beach Fossils record. Or like literally just being like, I am copying Wild Nothing. And but at the end of the day, like, it still sounds like you.
It's more about the output. That's the distinction, I think, is like, I don't think your music is coming out sounding like that. I feel like I see whatever. This just became a rant against...
I know, we're just talking like how we talk. Wait, it's a rant against what?
But I feel like I end up on TikTok and then I hear something and I'm like, okay, this sounds exactly like that other thing. Like you didn't even let it marinate long enough to like get your own flavor in there.
That makes sense. Do you think it is easier now to become a producer?
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Which I think is a good thing for sure.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think the fact that like there are people who are going to be famous producers and have become famous producers that started out making like beats on their cheap laptop with pirated software and like Fruity Loops and stuff is amazing. I think that's like so good for the culture.
Yeah, it's like all of Beyonce's beats are from FL Studio.
And like, I think to be like, oh, there's this specific way that you get to being a producer by like working an unpaid internship and working your way up through the studio system and like doing all of this stuff and like being an assistant engineer for years and then you finally get to start producing records is like bad for culture because it says there's only a specific kind of person with a specific kind of lifestyle that deserves to have their voice heard in that way.
Exactly.
I think the people with the most interesting stories and like the most interesting aesthetics and like styles are going to be the like teenagers clipping the...
And they have the freshest ideas.
Yeah. And they're like making the hardest shit by like clipping the tubas on Fruity Loops. Like,
literally max volume. Yeah.
It's so important that production is accessible like that.
Well, anything to expedite like creativity
Yeah.
is what matters in music. It's like the same as just having things set up and plugged in, ready to go so that you can just write. And I feel like that should also be accessible for kids that want to make music but can't afford studio day rates.
Yeah.
Which are, I don't want to say they're dying, but, you know, they're still expensive. And I think that a lot of studios are struggling to get artists in. And it's not their fault. It's just the accessibility of music now.
Yeah.
Like you can get a cheap computer now. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Scarlett interface. Yeah, and make a record.
Truly. I think people make amazing records with no gear. I love when because I used to watch like Against the Clock and stuff like that. And like some of those, you know, just videos where people were like produce on camera. And I would always get so... Of course, I love to see somebody with a room full of gear be like, this is how all of my gear... If they're actually making good music, I'm like, that's awesome. But I would get so excited when they would go do one of those things and it would just be somebody sitting at their computer. Like,
oh my God, yeah. Like the Yeji one.
Desktop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like Danny Hall, too. Like they did one with him and he was just sitting at like a desktop computer. And I was like, yes, that's awesome.
Such a flex.
You're gonna do the whole thing in the computer with your keyboard and mouse, and it's gonna be fire.
I mean, it shows up in like major songs too. Like, did you know how Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter was made?
Is Splice Loops? Yeah.
They didn't even change the key or the tempo.
Yeah.
And that is so cool.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the
I was
product. It's the output.
Because I don't care about that. And when I
Me
see
either.
people care about that, I'm like, whatever.
I think they're just jealous. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like a thing that if you're not a songwriter, maybe you would care about. But to me, I'm like, well, they still have to write the song. And that's the thing everybody likes. I think it's totally misguided to be like, well, that they didn't really do work, because nobody is sitting there being like, you know what I love? The guitar line in Espresso. They're singing I'm working late because I'm a singer.
Yeah, that I think about that every single day.
And that's not from Splice. That's from somebody's brain, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's visionary. But I love shit like that. Fuck it.
Yeah. One of my goals is to get to that point too, is just, I think I would love to write with pop artists and just see. Yeah. Well, let's do it. Let's get in the booth.
Who's your number one? Who is like the pop artist where you're like, I want him?
Honestly, Dua Lipa. And I think it's, yeah. I think it's because she's one of my favorite singers. Like, I love her,
great
the
voice.
tonality, great voice. She can obviously like sing the house down, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it would be fun to work with her because she obviously has like an interest in like funky guitar stuff, or like, you know, that last record, not the Tame Impala one. That last record was like Jamiroquai inspired. And I thought that was really sick.
I think you guys would fit together very well.
Thank you. What's yours?
Lady Gaga.
Oh, wait, that's so good.
I don't actually. I mean, I think what would fit better is probably like a Twigs, or like bigger than that, like a Rihanna or something, which I would love. But
wait, but why not Lady Gaga fitting?
Kind of don't think that. I don't know. We'll see what LG7 sounds like. You know what I mean? Because I don't actually know what her music is sounding like going forward. So she's always kind of changing it up. And maybe there's a point where we collide stylistically. But I feel like Chromatica vibes, I'm not like the person that you would come to if you were trying to make like cool house music. Like I kind of just don't do that. And I liked Chromatic a lot, but I don't have an interest in that. But in high school, I was obsessed because that's when all of those like Bad Romance and Paparazzi and all of that stuff was coming out, and I was obsessed with her. We love
Stephanie. Like I'd like she can't do wrong. Did you listen to the Bruno Mars song?
I love it.
I love the video
it's
too
so
when she's
good.
like when she like dances. It's so cute.
I love that song. But again, like I wouldn't really make a song like that, or like I could, but I don't think anybody would come to me being like, yeah. I feel like my bag is to make like a ballad, like a fucked up ballad.
You have strange sounding ballads on your record. So
yeah, I love that.
That checks.
You know how I feel like there's certain producers where you're like, oh, I'm going to go to A.G. Cook when I want like the banger club song or whatever. Like I go to so-and-so.
Jack Antonoff.
I go to
so-and-so,
like,
please.
Ariel Rechtsted when I want like a 70s sounding thing. You know what I mean? I want people to be like, I think that's my like 10-year goal or whatever, is be like, I go to Pascal when I want to have like a really demented, heartbreaking ballad.
Yes.
Because I love a ballad.
You do love a ballad. It's like, it's cinematic, your ballads.
Yeah. But I don't know if Lady Gaga will ever get there. We'll see.
Yeah. Thank you so much for answering some of my questions. Congrats on the record.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so excited for you. I think that everyone is going to love this record, seriously.
I really hope so. It was really great talking to you about it.
Oh, thanks. Well, let's hang out. Let's get lunch.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Pascal Stevenson and Melina Duterte for chatting. If you liked what you heard, please follow Talkhouse on your favorite podcasting platform and check out all the great stuff at talkhouse.com. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is performed and composed by The Range. See you next time.